Hello class, welcome to this chapter 10 handout video. I'm getting it downloaded here, brought it on my screen. I'll share my screen with you and we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully you, as in the past, had a chance to try to work this out on your own and as you check over and make sure everything, whatever you're doing it right. All right, so let's get going here. We start off with Dolce Company, produces chocolate. Each pound of chocolate requires 400 cocoa beans. That's the standard. And 0.15 1500 hours of labor. That's the labor standard. During the year, 480,000 pounds of chocolate were produced. Calculate the number of cocoa beans allowed for the actual output. Where our actual output here was 480,000. So we want to know how many beans the standard should be. Well, the standard was 400 times 400. That equals 192 million beans. That is our answer there. That is the number of maximum number allowed. We're talking about labor hours. We multiply by the 0.15 and we get 72,000 labor hours. So those are our maximum allowed in our answers of what we were looking for each question here. Okay. It's important because whenever we're going through and we're calculating our standards are always going to be at the production level, the actual production level. Okay, as you see, so we're always going to have to do this on every question. So that's the good first thing to get down. All right. Second, Young Inc. produces plastic bottles. We're talking about quantity of bottles here. So we're going to be worried about materials. Okay, we have a standard quantity of 0.45 ounces per bottle. During the month, 240,000 bottles were produced, and we used 110,000 ounces of plastic. Because this is the actual cost and the standard cost. Calculate the total variance for plastic in the month. Okay. And this is calculate the total variance, the materials and uses varied using the columnar and formula approaches. Well, I'm going to do the total variance here with the columnar approach. We're just going to do it all at once. So we do the columnar approach. We put our actual quantity times our actual price on one side. Then we go actual quantity times standard price in the middle. And then on the right, we do standard quantity times standard price. So our actual quantity here is 110,000. That's how many ounces of plastic we actually used. And the actual cost was 0.042 cents. Okay, so we multiply that out, we get 4,620. Okay, that was our actual cost. Over here for our standard quantity. We first have to calculate our standard quantity. Standard quantity equals, we made 240,000 bottles and we were supposed to use 0.45 per bottle. So we take that 240 times the 0.45 per bottle. We find that we should have only used 108 ounces of plastic in order to make these bottles. So that is our standard quantity. Times our standard price here, which was 0.045, that gives us 48.60. So when I take my actual cost minus my standard cost, I get, that's 46.20 minus 48.60, I get a negative 240. Okay, we do not use negative numbers. Negatives make it a favorable. We have a 240 favorable variance. Okay, that is the total. Right there. Okay, it was the 46.20 minus the 48.60. Okay, so now let's go into this middle part here. The actual quantity, which we get over here, was 110,000. Times the standard price, 4.5 cents. That gets us $49.50 here for our middle number. So when we take 4,620 minus 4,950, we get a negative 330. And again, we don't use negative numbers, but that is a favorable. Okay. This number is our price variance right there. Because as you can see, what we did is we kept the quantity the same, 110, 110. And what we did is we multiplied them each out by the price. The actual price was 0.042, where the standard price was 0.045. So the actual price was a little bit less. It was favorable. When we take 49.50 now, our middle number, minus 48.60, okay, we get 90, a positive number, so that is unfavorable. And this is our usage or our quantity variance, a 90 unfavorable. All right, which makes sense because we actually used 110 when the standard was 108. So the actual was more, makes sense that it's unfavorable. Now, if you'd rather do it with the formula approach, get our price variance, it's actual price minus standard price times actual quantity. So we have 0.042 minus 0.045 times our actual quantity here of 100,000. It comes out to negative 330. But again, remember, we don't use that negative sign. So instead, we just call it favorable. And for our usage or our quantity variance, we have our actual quantity minus standard quantity multiplied by the standard price. So 110,000 minus 108,000 times the standard price of 0.045. And that comes out to 90 unfavorable when you do out the math. So it doesn't matter which method you decide to use on this, you are going to get the exact same answers. Okay, I prefer the columnar approach. Maybe you like equations. You prefer just throw it into the equation real quick. Whatever works for you, as long as you can get the right answer. And finally, ambient ink, aluminum cans. We're going to do the same thing here. Okay, but now we're doing it with labor. So on my columnar approach, I'm going to have actual hours instead of quantity times the actual rate instead of price. In the middle, I still have my actual hours or the quantity times the standard rate now. And over here, we have standard hours times the standard rate. So our actual hours were 14,000. The actual rate was $15. So our actual cost here comes out to be 210,000. Now we need to find our standard hours. Our standard hours, okay, we produced 500,000 cans, right? And each can was supposed to take 0.03 hours. Okay. So we should have used 15,000 hours. That is our standard hours. And our standard rate was $14.50. So our cost should have been $217,500. So if we're looking at our total variance here, we get 7,500 actual less than standard, makes it favorable. If you can't remember that, it is a negative number. So negatives are favorable when we're doing it. So now we're plugging our middle number here. Our actual hours were 14,000. Standard rate was $14.50. We multiply that out, we get 203,000. So we're going to compare here. Our variance here is 7,000 unfavorable. That is our rate variance. Okay, it makes sense because the actual rate was $15 per hour. Our standard rate was $14.50, so we're paying a little bit more per hour. So it makes sense that it's unfavorable. We would also have a negative number here. And if you look over here, now we compare these two. The 203 minus the 217,500 gets us a negative 1450 or a 14,500 favorable. That is our efficiency variance, which makes sense because we actually use 14,000 hours when our standard was 15,000. We use less. And again, if you combine those two, the 1450 favorable plus the 7,000 unfavorable, we kind of subtract it out. That is our total. You can use the formulas to work these out. If we're going to do the rate, it equals actual rate minus the standard rate times the actual hours. So we would have 15 minus 1450 times our actual hours of 14,000. We get a 7,000 positive number or unfavorable. For efficiency, we would take our actual hours minus our standard hours multiplied by the standard rate. So we would have 14,000 minus 15,000 multiplied by 1450. And we would get negative 14,500. Remember, we take out the negative. Negatives are favorable. And it matches exactly with what we did when we did the columnar approach. Once again, reiterating that it does not matter which way you go about doing this, whichever way makes more sense to you, you are going to come up with the same answers. So that's what we're focusing on for chapter 10. Get your homework done, get that quiz done, make sure you get exam 3 done on time, and there's 2 more chapters and you will be done with accounting in your ASU BB career. Keep up the hard work. I'll talk to you again soon.